Solstice, the quest for the Staff of Demnos. From out of darkness shall arise a challenge to your wisdom. And welcome to Nostalgia, a chronological exploration of every NES game released in North America. I'm Mike.
I'm Sean.
And I'm Joe.
Would you guys believe me if I told you that this is the number 33 rated NES game on MobyGames.com, which, regardless of where we land in the Essential Games list, says a lot one way or the other about MobyGames.com?
I honestly haven't thought of that company in a very long time.
Well, what do you think of when you think of Moby Games?
Well, thanks for calling me out. I don't actually know what they do. Do they make like strategy guides?
They make they're like a video game database. They have every video game ever and screenshots of all the games, and it's a very informative site for someone like me. Someone like you who forgets about the games the second after we play them should never check out Moby Games.
I think that's probably for the best.
So Solstice, the quest for the Staff of Demnos. I'm not going to say that full title anymore. We'll just refer to it as Solstice. Are we all cool with that?
I think that more like Staff of Demnos is more like indicative.
Right, because you have to collect the 6 pieces of the Staff of Demnos.
Or just like SOD.
Oh, SOD, okay.
But you think Staff of Demnos is more the title than Solstice?
Absolutely. It's not anywhere on the title screen.
The Staff of Demnos is what your is like at least your goal, right? Like, is Solstice
one
of the characters or something? Like, is that you?
I think it's just the day that it happens.
Oh, yeah, it happens on the winter solstice. Gotcha.
The manual, if you read that novella, mentions this.
The whole thing is one long scroll.
Yeah.
But it's for everything, not just like, here's a scroll that tells you the story and they're trying to be cute about like presenting the story in that way. It's like, nope, here's also how the potions work and how the map works. And yeah, it's really crazy that they committed to that because it's more text in a manual than I have seen, that I'm used to. You know, usually you're used to big pictures and then like some kind of guide of like, and this icon in the game means this, and this icon means that. And
I, for one, appreciate the amount of effort that they put into the manual instead of just like a block of sans serif text describing the story, and then like, yeah, I liked it.
I agree, and totally, obviously, this is not the intention, but what you just said about like there being so much text and not as many pictures kind of mirrors how this game feels to me, where most games where your goal is to save a princess is very high-octane, action-based, and this is much more cerebral than other games like that. I feel like the whole thing is like, you're playing as a wizard, you're going to feel like you have to, like, think.
As I was trying to mention earlier, you're collecting the 6 pieces of the Staff of Demnos throughout the hidden they're hidden within the fortress of Kastlerock, which sounds boring, but is starts with a K. It's Kastlerock like that, so it's really
definitely
intense
not boring then.
Yeah, yes. Exactly. However, those 6 pieces are hidden across 250 rooms, so this castle is very large, and those rooms are actually very small. When I heard 250 rooms before playing the game, I was like, oh, this is going to be one of those games where you just get lost and you have to like refer to a guide and everything. But the rooms are like, okay, here's like 1 or 2 things going on in this room, and then there's directions to other rooms, and like you'll still get lost, but it's not a labyrinth like what was that game that we all really hate? Deadly Towers.
Deadly Towers, yeah.
Yeah. So it's not like that. I think that's fair.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that, was Deadly Towers isometric like this? It was, right?
Ish. It was like a really bad drawing of an isometric environment. Whereas this, like, it. So the thing about the isometricness, like it makes it a little. You need to take some getting used to of what the controls actually do, which I think also existed in Deadly Towers. But because this is true isometric, you eventually get the hang of it, and it all makes sense. And it also like looks nice, like that all that isometricness. It's all very clean. It's kind of toy like, which I think bodes well for the actual like what you're doing.
Yeah, and while the wonkiness of it being isometric, and obviously like what we mean by that is like pressing up on the D-pad moves you up right. Like there are 4 directions in this game. That are up right, up left, down right, and down left. So I literally started just tilting my controller a little bit, and that helped my brain get around like where I was going. But once I get around that, it actually controls very smoothly. It does not look like at first glance, maybe just based on like other things that we've played, at first glance it looks like it's going to control poorly. But it's, I think, pretty incredibly smooth and like intuitive.
I will put on trial for this whole episode, probably, because I'm going to keep referencing him. The creator of this game, Mark Wilson, who, since we're talking about the isometric design, he's quoted as saying that he thought that it would be smart for the company to make an isometric game as their first game for the NES, because no such format had previously been attempted on the console. But that's not true. We've seen a lot of isometric games on the NES, even pretty recently. So that's one strike against Mark Wilson.
Mike, this was a long time ago. Like, discoveries were made separate of one another, and they had no idea. There was no means of communication.
You mean to tell me he wasn't playing the games chronologically?
He only had the games that were released, like, in his state, probably.
Yeah, in his local Toys R Us.
It took so long for information to travel back then.
Well, if that's a strike against him, I will give him a point in his corner as well, because going back to the manual, he referred to the manual, which was written by the publishers, not him, as a mass of illiterate and asinine drivel.
Wait. Who said this?
The creator of the game.
Oh, okay.
You know how it works, right? Like, you develop something, you make it, and then it gets over to the publishing side, and it's like, oh, well, we got to market this game. And so they wrote up all that stuff in that manual. And he was like, I guess to the point that, we were coming to earlier too, is like, do you need all of this text to understand how to play this game? Like, I'm sure I took one look at the manual and just said, let me try it instead. So I just went in there and I learned how to play the game without looking at the manual.
But I'm also going to say that, it's not Shakespeare, but I think he's getting a little too, like, hoity-toity for his britches,
Ooh, so is this another point against?
Game, it's nice to have a story in the manual.
Yeah, what sort of story was he trying to tell where something as, like, mundane and, like, inoffensive as what was written in the manual it requires that insane of a reaction?
That's 2 strikes, Mark. Watch out. Okay, moving on to some stuff about the actual game. I said it was 250 rooms, this castle, and that you're looking for those 6 pieces of the staff between them, but it's not 250 individual puzzles. It's not an arcade-like game in that regard where, every single room you have to solve something. You're free to explore most of the rooms and kind of like figure out which direction you head in until you hit some kind of dead end, and then maybe go back and re-roam to try to find your navigation. So let's talk first just about navigating the castle. Did it feel like it had a clear outline, or was it something where if you go in a direction, you might just get screwed and wind up doing nothing?
I think that the map is that the map at least gives you a little bit of a break, because you can kind of see what's around you. And I'm not going to say that it was perfect though, because you can only see so far away from yourself. And all the rooms kind of look the same, so you still need to have a pretty good mental map of the space. And the amount of featureless rooms, where, again, like you mentioned, there are no puzzles and are there just to connect to other puzzles or be sort of labyrinthine on their own, it does make it difficult to navigate, but I think that's sort of part of the game.
Yeah, it always feels like you can get lost, and it was designed to get you lost, and it never feels like Deadly Towers, where it's like, where am I supposed to go? What is going on here? Like, usually I'm lost and I can get my bearings, and it's actually kind of satisfying to get my bearings in this, because as much as like the rooms do look samey, they are all unique. Like, as far as I've seen, I didn't beat the game, but as far as I've seen, every single one of them is unique and has, like, stuff, for the most part, that you can commit to memory. Like, okay, this is the one where there's that high-up green platform floating back and forth. Granted, there's a lot of green platforms floating back and forth, but, like, there are times where, like, I'll run into something, oh, okay, I'm back here. This must be a loop. You know, that kind of thing. That helps.
There was a section that sort of had that, like, featureless labyrinth where you go from one featureless room to another, and it kind of has that, but it's not the only part of the game. And there are enough landmarks where you can kind of get your bearings. But I guess, like, what I wanted to say about the gameplay itself was the fact that, you know, when you have these more set piece rooms, one thing that I would have hated is if all of them were so interconnected that you would have to, like, go grab this thing from 3 rooms over and then bring it over to this room, and you don't know which thing to take, and, like, whether that would break another puzzle. What I like is that each of these puzzle rooms are self-contained, and yes, you might need to, like, get a piece of maybe equipment or maybe refill a potion somewhere else, but otherwise everything you need is in that puzzle room. So the only thing that could be the solution would be in that puzzle room. So I at least appreciated that part of it.
Yeah, and they're all very small puzzles. It's not like Adventures of Lolo, even, where, like, there's a few things you have to do. Like, I shouldn't even say that. Of course, there are puzzles in here where there's a few things you have to do, but, like, it's all usually, if you can solve the puzzle, it's all right there in front of you. You can see what it is, and it's like, okay, I just got to get this, this, and this. And some of the difficulty comes in the platforming and stuff, but it's like a bunch of tiny puzzles. It's like a lot of tiny puzzles rather than, like, a good amount of, like once you know how to solve a puzzle, I guess what I'm trying to get at is you can solve it very quickly.
Like in Talos Principle.
Yeah, if you have the skill, you can solve them very quickly. And I kind of like that about it, where it doesn't feel like, okay, on to the next puzzle. It just feels like on to the next room, and I got to, like, navigate my way through this entire castle. The whole castle is a bunch of little tricks that you have to figure out. I don't know if that made any sense, but...
No, I think that makes a lot of sense, because given the size of the rooms themselves and the number of rooms, it's better to have these, short bursts of gameplay rather than truly, like, sitting there or having to constantly backtrack and be like, okay, yeah, what I needed was actually in another room, and you have to go back several rooms, find something, bring it back, only to realize that you still don't have everything you need, so you go to another... Like, there wasn't anything too grand like that, and I think, given the number of puzzles that there are in the game, it's up to the player to decide if that becomes, like, tedious, fast solving action stuff, or if it's just like, this is exactly the right amount, and I would have hated if this game would have, required constant backtracking through a castle this large.
Yeah, because even if you get lost, or if you go somewhere and you're like, well, I don't know how to solve this puzzle, like, I can't figure out the trick to this room, and then you back up, like, yeah, there's other rooms near you that, like, there's always seems to be, like,
try something
else you can do in the meantime before the trick comes to you.
And so knowing that the main abilities of, I believe I found his name in the manual as Shadax. That's who we're playing as. Cool. That sounds pretty cool. Shadax.
Or Shadax.
Shadax. How you doing, buddy? His main abilities are jumping and picking up objects. And picking up objects is a rather, sounds boring and lame when you say it like that. But, the objects you can pick up can change what is possible. So knowing that those are, like, making it a little bit more of a platforming isometric puzzler, how often does the gameplay remain fresh and different versus, like, well, I solved a puzzle like this before, so I know how to do this now, and I just wind up doing this a lot?
I think that there's enough going on here between the kinds of things you can pick up and then everything that you can do with your potions. Like, I won't go so far as to say that this is as like outside the box as like a Portal. Like that's kind of goofy thing to say about this game, but the time stop stuff, the hidden features that you can open up with the whatever color potion, like the things that you can end up doing, combining all of the kinds of items and the kinds of platforms, and like I think that they all kind of have their own vibe to them. Each puzzle, they're not all exactly the same. Like you can, there's a lot of like verticality to these puzzles, and having to, jump, release the thing you're holding, stop time, then jump, release the thing, release another thing, stop time again, and then get onto an enemy's head and get kind of taken for a ride. Like there's a lot of like clever stuff.
Yeah, and what kind of tipped me off right away was the ability to pick something up, jump in the air, drop what you picked up, and jump off of it while it's in the air to get yourself more height, and the necessity to do that. That made me realize how much like this game relies on. There's maybe there's maybe like 6 things you can do, but each of those things are fluid enough that you can like really play with them and make them have these different results all the time. Like, you can drop one of these boxes that you've picked up onto the head of an enemy, and it'll stay on the enemy's head, and you can ride the enemy around. It's like that kind of thing where it's like, think outside the box a little bit, and like even though there's only a few actions you can do, there's a lot of like clever things you can do with that. Granted, the game is obviously designed to get you to do those clever things, so like question becomes who's actually being clever, the player or the developer, but like it feels satisfying to figure some of these things out.
The one thing that I appreciate the most about like all those little things that you can do, all those verb buttons, is it's unlike a lot of the puzzles, quote unquote, that we've played in other games that may or may not be actual puzzle games, where like, I guess it's more of a Metroidvania thing, where it's like, you get this ability that is only to be used in these very specific instances that are telegraphed. Like all of the abilities that you use can be used at any point, and it may or may not be all that useful to you, but they can still be used outside of the context of the puzzle in which it was designed for, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, I think it does. And keeping in mind, too, with the potions we've been talking about, so you have 4 empty beakers, and you can store various potions in there that basically, as long as you're within the room, this is an interesting solve. It's not a timer-based thing. It's not like drink the potion and you're good for 5 minutes or something like that. It's 5 minutes is way too long. I don't know why I suggested that. 30 seconds, right? Instead, it's like as long as you're in the room you're in and you drank the potion there, you are able to acquire that ability throughout the duration that you're in that room. The second you leave that room and go back to it, it doesn't matter anymore. You no longer have that ability. So it does require some thought, or at least some trial and error and some risk involved of like, maybe I need invincibility or something, or maybe I want to freeze the objects in their place, right? It's like those kinds of things. If you don't do them correctly, you've wasted the potion and now have to go either track down another one or try to solve the puzzle without it. I think the strongest point to like say that this was a well-designed game is that the potions aren't necessarily required for the puzzle solving. At least most of the puzzles I encountered didn't require like, if you don't have invincibility, like you won't be able to walk over these spikes and therefore you won't be able to get this key. That didn't happen.
I thought that there were some, but I don't know. I might just have not known the actual way to solve it. The time-stopping one particularly.
Time stop is definitely necessary in at least a couple of them, because you can't get enough height unless you drop something and not let it drop. But I can see, invincibility be just more of like a go easy on me button. I don't know.
Yeah, I think that kind of stinks though, right? Like, now I'm second guessing my praise for it, because it's like, well, in that case, like, then the potion shouldn't be like limited to the player in that regard. Not that they're limited, like you can always get them, but I don't know. I feel like the fact that
is this an argument pro potions are necessary or anti?
I'm against it. Yeah, I think they shouldn't be necessary. I think like, especially because it's just like it's a limited number of things that they do and everything. Like it should just be like a bonus to the player that's stuck, not necessarily a requirement.
I think at that point it's just like a platformer then.
Right. I see where you're coming from, but I do think that the intention is to make it like you have to, part of the puzzle is like, don't use this in the wrong place. Like, and if you do, you're gonna have to go find more somewhere. I like the idea because I think that helps the puzzles have more depth, where it's like there's these other 4 tools that might need to be used in these puzzles too, and you have to figure out, like, if I can't figure it out, then I do have to, like Sean was saying a minute ago, think, okay, wait, maybe if I stop time, or maybe if I destroy all the objects on the screen, or I don't remember what the 4th one does, but
I think it's invincible, stop time, see invisible stuff.
Oh, see the invisible stuff.
And destroy all objects, yeah.
And I can confirm that there isn't a potionless run of the game, at least in the speed run category. So there must be a requirement at some point or another that a room can't be solved unless you use a specific potion. Moving on, we'll talk about something we don't usually talk about when we talk about our NES games, and that is the music. And it's not because we hate the music in other games, but I really feel like I felt very strongly upon booting this game up that I must make a bullet point of, like, we have to at least let people know, in case you didn't play Solstice, you might want to listen to the soundtrack.
Yeah, you got to play like the menu music right here, because that is like mind blowing.
It's good,
and it's all Tim Fallon, that guy. That
it's Timothy Fallon.
Oh, okay, sorry.
On the menu screen of this game only.
Yeah, he wants to be known as Timothy during
it sounds
those
more
few
wizardly.
Months.
Do we know him from other things?
We do. Tim Fallon, what else? He did one that
Pictionary.
we've already done, but no, Pictionary we didn't play.
I know, but I talked about it as if we did.
Yeah, that's episode. The one, but no, I don't know. I can't remember which game of his we already played, but he's just known for making, like, out of this world music in all of the games. He's going to do a lot more other than Pictionary, though, too. Like, he also did Silver Surfer.
Thank God.
What else did he do? On the NES, at least. Oh, Target Renegade was the one that we already played. You remember that? That was a good game.
Yeah,
I like Target Renegade. Anything else he did that we played already? Oh, he did Magic Johnson's Fast Break. I don't remember us saying anything good about that. Yeah, I don't remember us saying anything good about that. I just remember Magic Johnson's head appearing as a jump scare.
Yeah. At the most inopportune moments.
Yep. All right, so that's a shout out for him. And while we're on the subject of talking to people, should we get back to our friend Mark Wilson?
He's low on strikes.
If you have some problems.
Yep, he can't afford a third strike because according to the rules of Major League Baseball, 3 strikes and you're out. So I looked into the development of the game, and I've done that from time to time. I try not to get, like, too in the weeds because I don't want it to paint a picture of something that we're supposed to be reviewing in 2024.
Did he have, like, a huge coke habit?
It's just like it was so lengthy for a game. Like, you know, the gameplay section on Wikipedia was so small compared to the development thing, and I was like, all right, let me read this. What's going on? So he put all of the, like, he mapped out everything, right? Like hand-drawn on graph paper, and put, like, where everything would be before programmers, like, put it into the game, right? So this way there's, like, everything is thought of, everything is carefully planned out. It's what we like to see in our video games. We're all three of us are on the same page on that?
No, I think you should just wing it.
Well, then you sound like the head of the studio, who I feel like I had his name somewhere at one point, but right now I just have the last name, Webb. You sound like this guy, Webb, because he says, I don't understand why we would spend that amount of time to design this game. And he presented an alternate map created by his girlfriend that she did one night before, consisting of 255 randomly connected empty rooms.
And which one did they use?
So out of, obviously that led to a bad argument, right? And they did wind up using Wilson's, but here's the kicker. He gives Webb the co-designer credit.
Well, I feel like that's a political thing, you know? Like,
yeah, but he used his own map and everything, and he gives Webb the credit. So Wilson goes on record saying, I regret this action, but this is all after the fact. None of this information came out at the time, and we're only getting Wilson's side of the story, so you have to wonder, with a guy with 2 strikes,
I
is
feel
that
like
story true?
I mean, I find it hard to believe that it was something as dumb as, like, nah, she can do it in a night, all 250 rooms. Like, that sounds dumb. So I don't think I believe him on that, on that remark. I would tend to believe that maybe he was taking it more seriously than this person. But considering how he spoke about, like, how offended he got just from somebody trying to fill a blurb to add some flavor to the game.
It was Webb's girlfriend wrote that the night before.
He just sounds like somebody I wouldn't get along with.
So this is not an investigative podcast, and none of us have degrees in journalism.
This is all vibe checks.
I'm just going to vibe check it further then, Sean, if you don't mind, because so maybe this should have been mentioned earlier, but it comes now as a grand reveal. While working at Microprose after his time making this game, he did like an interview for a game, and one of the interviewers falsely identified Webb as the game's sole designer of Solstice. So maybe that is what caused him to kind of, years later provide an interview with some color of like, I did this game on graph paper all by myself and accidentally gave a credit because of guilt.
I'm starting to think that maybe he's I forgot the guy's name, but like the stapler guy from Office Space, where he's just kind of a pushover and
Milton
only has like a lot of vengeance to himself until after the fact.
So is that a strike or not?
It can't be determined, I think.
Okay, 3 strikes. He's out of here. Webb created the game.
I agree. Webb created this game. I hope you're not around to hear this.
Good job, Webb.
Yeah, it's funny. I never took the time to write down his first name as I continue to look through my notes. I'm just like, yeah, Webb. Anyway, here's something you don't hear often, but used to be a thing. Like I feel like during our time of playing games, like in magazines and stuff, or if you went to like Blockbuster, the first 5,000 customers to order Solstice direct from CSG ImageSoft, the publisher, received a free player's pack consisting of an 8mm videotape of the making of Solstice, a player's scorecard, trading cards, and colored stickers. Now, obviously, the stuff I was talking about, we didn't get that much, but like you'd get a VHS tape to your house. Did you guys ever get those VHS tapes?
Not about video
to my
games.
house.
Yeah, I would get like from Nintendo Power, like here's a VHS tape all about like Banjo-Kazooie.
No, I wish I had gotten that.
No.
I mean, maybe it wasn't Nintendo Power, maybe it was like something else, but like, yeah, I have a lot of those, and I still have those VHS tapes. I wonder if they're worth anything. It's kind of cool.
Is in the making of, like, does it show him designing the game or this other person designing the game?
That's a funny thing. We should really try to dig that up because I didn't think to look for that, but that might be all the evidence we need. We might need a part 2 of this podcast.
I think we can. Yeah, let's do that. Let's track that down.
Well, Nintendo published this game in Europe, so they clearly liked it on their, like, that's high praise, right? To be published by Nintendo. It's not just like it's not something they just hand out to people. So it's not a pity thing. It's not like, oh, you can't find a publisher in Europe, we'll publish you. It's like, nah, it feels like a pretty, like, a good marketing push.
I mean, not getting into like whether you like the gameplay or whether you think it's like well designed gameplay wise. This game earned a seal of quality. It's a quality. It's got it's a clean game. It controls well. It's got great music. I think that Nintendo would be fine putting their name on this and being like, this is a polished experience.
We've played, I think every game that we've played has the Nintendo seal of quality. We've played some real
Well, that's why I was laughing, yeah. In fact, because of the rules of the podcast, every NES game released in North America, we are only playing games with the seal of quality.
But not all of them, I would say, earned it.
Oh, so there's like a Joe seal next to the Nintendo seal?
Yeah, I think that, like, they're giving them out willy-nilly, but I think that there's some that, like, okay, this one deserves a seal of quality.
Got it. Well, we will find out if this one deserves a seal of quality on the Essential Games list. In our conversation so far about Solstice, we've talked about the features and kind of did like a checklist of things. Like, yeah, it's an isometric POV game. It's 250 rooms. You gotta solve puzzles. The controls are like, even though it's displayed like a grid, it's not rigid. You kind of like free roam around the squares, and that takes some getting used to, but then it gets fine. I think like the way we treated the game on the show and how I played it felt like the same kind of thing. I was doing all of this for the podcast, including playing the game. I don't know how to put my finger on it, but I wasn't dying to continue playing. I was playing out of necessity to talk about it on the show. And I think it boils down to, even though you guys kind of said the controls are all right, I think I just didn't like the free roaming thing, and I would have preferred to be locked in on a grid where, like, when you move in a direction, you move kind of like, I don't know, maybe that would have helped with the puzzle solving more. Maybe it would have made the puzzles more less interesting, more boring, because now it's like you just think about it on a square by square basis. But I just couldn't really adapt to the kind of game that they were putting down here, in the sense of like something that was keeping me stimulated. It was a rather dry experience in my books, and so I can't put it on the Essential Games list for that reason. Joe?
Yeah, I see what you're saying about the grid thing, and I think we've talked about this in, I think, was it also Lolo? Or maybe Solomon's Key or something like that. We've talked about that kind of thing. I get that in this game. I felt that I get the vibe that they're trying. It almost feels more like a 3D platformer. So we didn't really talk too much about the platforming, but it's like almost as much a part of this game as the puzzle solving, if not as much. And it's hard. It's hard to land on what you're trying to land on. It's hard to get your head around it at first, but it does. Once you kind of get used to it, I did start to appreciate the platforminess of it. But outside of that, I really liked this game. I think I'm alone here, but maybe not. I don't know. We'll see what Sean says. But I like this game a lot. So I won't give it away. But just before we started recording, one of you said something that I was like, "Oh no, I'm gonna be the only one who like really liked this game." And I am gonna put a vote on the Essential Games list. I get why this is number 30 on whatever list we were talking about at the beginning of this game. I felt like I loved exploring and solving each of these little things, coming back to rooms later once I like had more potions, or I had, the extra boots or some other piece of information to try. And I kind of liked that, like, even if I were to, and the game is pretty forgiving with lives. You get a lot of lives. There's a lot of extra lives. But even if I were to like fail and start over, I like that I kind of like, okay, well, now I have an idea of what to do. I can get through these rooms pretty quick. Like I'm learning this castle as I go, and I appreciated that. And then that coupled with just the even though there's only one track playing through the whole thing, it's a great track. It's good music in this game altogether. But yeah, we'll see if I'm still as high on it when we get to the best of. But right now, I'm pretty high on it.
All right, Sean.
All right. So as much shit as I'd like to talk to the main developer of this game, who was, I forgot his name.
Mark Wilson.
Mark Wilson.
Oh, you mean Webb? You said the main developer.
Yeah, whoever that is, Mitchell or Webb. I'd say that I also do like this game a lot. However, there is something. It's not like it's not the thing that Mike said, where it's just like, oh, I just don't like the game. To me, there is just some je ne sais quoi going on. I'll say that this is of the caliber of an essential game, but it just didn't connect with me so as much as to say that it is essential. So Joe, I don't think you're crazy for for voting for this. I just think that as much as I objectively appreciate what it's doing, I don't emotionally have it in me to also vote for it right now. But who knows? Maybe my opinion will change by the best of 1999.
Yeah, with our luck, though, we'll both change our opinion and we'll still be at a stalemate.
Well, fans of Solstice, like Sean and Joe, will be somewhat relieved to know that there was a sequel. Can you guess what the title
is?
Was?
It called Equinox?
It is.
Oh, it is?
It is.
I saw something else that looked like a sequel just before we started recording, and it was not Equinox. It was like So-and-so's Revenge or something.
Oh, interesting. I don't have anything like that in my notes, but Equinox is definitely a sequel released for the Super Nintendo in 1993. The big difference, of course, is the number of rooms. Now there's 450 of them.
That's the only room. That's the only difference.
That's the only difference, right? No, of course I'm joking, but there's 450 of those rooms now. Here's the kicker. They're split between 8 dungeons. So instead of one giant castle, it's now 8 different ones. So hopefully they spice it up a little bit on that regard too. And it also has, of course, as all Super Nintendo games were practically required to, this is a joke, they had Mode 7 effects to really sell home the next level features of the Super Nintendo. The game is also credited with giving inspiration to the isometric take on Tactic Ogres on Super Nintendo. I thought that was kind of interesting. I'm like, wow, that's a Japanese-developed game, and yet
I don't know anything about that game.
Tactic Ogre? I think it just got like a remake on Switch or something like that, like maybe a year or two ago. Those are good games. Those are like based off the foundation of, or not based off of later they inspired the Final Fantasy Tactics game. Yeah, they play very similar. And we play very similar games all the time because we are doing a chronological exploration of every NES game released in North America, and our next game is Starship Hector. I don't know if Hector's piloting the ship. Yeah, Hector, like a name. I don't know if Hector is piloting the ship or if the ship is just named after a person. It's kind of like when you name a dog after a human and then you tell people, like, oh, what's your dog's name? And then you say it and they're like, that's my name. Which is weird. And then you never look at your dog the same way again.
Battlestar Mikey.
Yep, you'll never look at this podcast the same way again as we next week record Starship Hector. Join us.